Hey everyone, welcome back to another webisode of The Journey to More. You know me, I am the entrepreneur's attorney and business strategist where I help you start, structure, and legally protect your business, your brand, and your profits. Now, today, we have a special guest here, Dr. Becky. Okay. She goes by Dr. B, and we're going to be talking about interpersonal skills and how to overcome imposter syndrome and fear. But before we get started, I got to get the bio right. Let me make sure I get it right. She is the founder and owner of Common Ground Conflict Solutions. Dr. Becky Bell, aka Dr. B, is a charismatic and inspirational alternative dispute resolution practitioner, speaker, trainer, consultant, and certified master coach with over 25 years experience. Dr. B delivers high energy, high impact services that challenge and empower clients to shift mindsets and gain clarity so they can maximize their potential. Her work with individuals, couples, groups, teams, y'all, she does it all. Includes, working with Nova Southern University and the Darius Daniels Group, just so many different things. So we're so lucky to have this certified master coach, trainer, and consultant here with us to kind of bring us to the place that we need to be, to master us, to lead us, and to grow us. Dr. B, you have anything to say for the people?
Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here with you. You are in extremely great hands when you're hanging out with Miss I Am More. So, Jamila is the attorney for attorneys. She's the attorney of attorneys. So, I am so honored to be here in a space with her because she is the truth.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. See how we just love on each other. And so I want to jump right in into making sure everyone could really like sit in and think through this. And so when we think about interpersonal skills, sometimes those are soft skills that we don't think about that are really critical for our success. It is critical for our success as leaders, it's critical for our success as entrepreneurs, and whatever else in life, mastering self. So
Yeah.
tell me, what do you believe are the most important interpersonal skills for success?
So I can honestly say, because I've been doing this type of work for so many years, I think they're all extremely important. And so it's
Mm,
it's kind of hard to pull out one. But if I
mhm.
had to pull out one, I have to say it absolutely starts with self-awareness. And when we think of self-awareness, most of us don't think about that as an interpersonal skill. It absolutely is. And that's where we have to start. Because if we don't know how we show up, we are likely to show up raggedy and may not know it. So I would have to say starting with self-awareness.
Listen, I don't know about y'all, but I had to just pull out a notepad and start taking some notes, right? Because I can't miss any of the gems that are already being dropped. So I want to talk through this because someone said to me the other day, like, I love your self awareness. And I was just like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't think anything of it. But for you to say this is one of the most overlooked interpersonal skills, but has one of the hugest impacts on our leadership, our relationships, on the things of the things, and we oftentimes miss it. How can we start to build a level of self awareness in our own lives?
All right. So the first thing, and I'm Mila, you know how I am. I'm very transparent. So one of the things there has to be a desire to start that process. I can tell you about almost 3 decades ago, I knew I was supposed to be working on self awareness. Absolutely did not want to. I didn't like who I was. And so, why would I look at somebody I'm not really too crazy about? That in itself was an epiphany for me. Wait a minute. Why don't I like me? You know what? I'm not that bad. And so,
Yeah.
starting with a desire to get to know you more, get to know you better. And so, it starts there. The other piece is people will give you feedback on you even when you don't want it. The key is finding those trusted agents because the trusted agents, those in your circle, those that care about you and for you, they're going to tell you the truth. A lot of times when we don't like what they say, we want to
Ooh.
dismiss it.
Mm-hmm.
Self awareness means taking those bits of information and integrating them into how you're getting a full picture of who you are and how you show up. So critically important to get that feedback. Again, getting that feedback from trusted agents, because we all know there are haters out there, and they will tear you down just as quickly as your trusted agents will build you up. So be very intentional about who you get that feedback from.
I can just say right now, I need spirit of the part two of this whole session because I had to just lean into this here because the whole purpose of the journey to more is to kind of bridge the things that are holding us back from our greatest level of success, right? Whether it's in leadership, whether it's in entrepreneurship, whether it's just in personal development. We can't do things that hold us back so we're not living the life we're supposed to live, right? It's that piece of like, I am and more. And so I want to lean into this piece of like, how could you help someone who says like, I don't like me? And I know that it's interesting because I walk around the house sometimes and I'm like, man, Jamila, I really love you. Like,
I
girl,
love it.
like you really be out here. And sometimes I'm not always that positive when I'm like looking at life circumstances rather than like God's truth about my life. But for
Yes.
the most part, that's the framework that I have. Like, girl, you just done just develop. You done just, change the game. But like, I'm graced and blessed to be there. But
Yes.
so many of our sisters and brothers are not. Like, how do we help them?
Oh my gosh. Um, I have a mantra, and I'm jumping ahead of myself, but I have to put it out there before I forget it. My mantra for life is raise as I rise. So as I rise up, I've got to raise up some. So as people poured into me, as people made sure that I recognized who I was, I have to do the same thing for others. So often in certain communities, we're so fearful of someone doing better than us. We're so fearful of someone surpassing us. My thing is, I want that next generation to be better than me. That's my job. That's what I'm here for. So, making sure that we are sowing into others, because sometimes we need to hear things from other people. For instance, and it goes well beyond, cosmetics and things like that, but you can see a female who looks really really nice and other females who may not appreciate the way that they look. Let me give you an example. Before I was self-aware and before I was as mature as I am now, this is crazy, I'm going to share it, and I can't believe I'm going to share this on air. So I was walking through a store. It may have been a mall or something like that. And I know I looked pretty decent that day, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. And as I'm walking past, there's all of these mirrors, but I don't know that they're mirrors. And I catch out of the glimpse of my eye this beautiful, poised woman. And in
Mm.
my mind, I'm like, look at her. She thinks she's cute. It was me. It was me. So I say that to say sometimes we don't realize what others are seeing in us until you see it from a different vantage point. I saw me that day from a different vantage point, and I realized, you know what? I do have it going on. I'm okay. And that's just some, an outward example. But an inward example has to happen at the same time. And one gem that I can share with everyone is the same thing that you said that you do, Jamila. Recognizing those things that you are, those great things that we have to recognize our successes. We have to recognize all of the positive things we bring to the table. When we do great things, we have to recognize those things because we're so quick to dismiss them and run on to the next. And that's what happens a lot.
So let me just tell y'all how she's a master coach and she's masterfully teaching us right now. And when we think about interpersonal skills, imposter syndrome, and fear, she's tackled all of that in like 9 minutes, just talking about self-awareness. And so you're always going to think you are an imposter
Yeah.
until you see yourself from that right vantage point. You're always going to be fearful until you see yourself from that right vantage point. And to help you see yourself from that right vantage point, you have to have trusted partners around you. Right. And so I think sometimes we get so complacent in thinking and being around the same communities, the same things, doing the same thing day after day. And that's really stopping us from being the best version of us because we're not being stretched.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You hit it. You hit it. Mila, can I share something?
Yes.
So when I was thinking about imposter syndrome and how the most significant way it showed up in my life, it's not right now in this space. So I'm prior military, and I started out enlisted, and I did really well in my career, and I was doing great.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to become an officer, and so I got commissioned. When I got commissioned as an officer, they gave me a different job. The job as an officer was a satellite officer. So I don't mean the people who control the satellite dishes. I mean the satellites that are in the sky. My job was to make sure they stayed in the box that they were supposed to be in. Or my job was to help move it from one space to another. That
Mm-hmm.
was my job. Another part of my job was actually launching a rocket that took another satellite up to the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Imposter syndrome to the max. I'm a people person. I did HR, I did civil rights, the media, the stuff I went back to that I'm doing now. But in that space, they had me doing something that was absolutely foreign to me. And when I tell you imposter syndrome showed up and stayed, like it made a residence in my head. And fortunately for me, one of my trusted agents at that time, my then husband, my
Mm-hmm.
now husband was my then fiance. You can do this. You can do this. You are so smart. You're intelligent. This is not beyond you. Somebody poured into me. He not only poured into me, he helped me study. He didn't understand a thing I was studying, but he was my study partner and he wanted to make sure I had what I needed. So little by little, I kept saying, well, you know what? God didn't take me here for me to fail. Failure is not an option. So, Becky, get it together and do what you need to do to push forward. And that's what I had to do. And that's what I did. So, the first thing was, of course, the first thing is God. Prayed about it. The Bible says faith without works is dead. So, okay, what you going to do now, Becky? So now I have to put in the work. And I think that's what scares a lot of us is the overwhelm of the
So
work.
good. So good.
Yeah. Yeah.
The overwhelm of the work.
Yeah.
Oh my, she freeing me right now, y'all. The way I be around here procrastinating about stuff, some stuff. It's just like, I haven't done it before. And that connects to the imposter syndrome. But one of the key things that you said is you have to know God.
Yes.
And I'm going to add on to that because I'm only at this place and space right now because not only do I know God, I know who God has created me to be.
Mm.
And that's the other piece that most people, and it's been a thing that I've been wrestling with lately. I'm like, okay, so around 34, I got it in my head. It's solidified that okay, this is who I am. Cool. But I'm like, I know that I'm lucky to have this knowledge. And I almost want to do a study on like, when do people really find out, or do they ever find out who they really are, who God has created them to be? Because when you find that out, you start to show up different, you start to be different, you start to live different. And so
Yes.
many times, and this is why we're talking about interpersonal skills. So many times we're going to focus on the things on the outside. And the best things that we can do in our life are on the inside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Mila, let me ask you. So, you're in this space now. When do you think you actually began to find who you are and what your purpose is?
Yeah. So honestly, walking through Daniel's Den with Dr. Daniels. And then when God let me off my job, he just
Mm.
fully introduced me to me, because it was just me and him. And if
Yes.
I'm very, very, very transparent, and this is my public apology to God right now, I was upset when I knew that it was like time to go. I knew May 21st, I was driving off the ramp, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to be at this job long. I had started in
Mm.
February. I knew that God was going to call me off, and he agitated the circumstances. So by December 2021, I was walking out of that job. And so I was like, I don't have no husband. Like, where's my support system? People leaving their jobs, they got a support system. It's just gonna be me and you. Like, that's so crazy to say. It's gonna be me and you. Ain't it supposed to be me and you? But I that was my I was, and I remember I was standing like right over there in my kitchen, and I was like, God is about to make me totally lean and depend on him. And it's been scary. I have bawled, bawled, and I've taken pictures to kind of capture those moments.
I love that.
Yeah, because I knew it was something that was building the testimony.
Mm.
And so it's like, so many times, to get back to answering your question, so many times we live life environmentally cluttered.
Yeah.
We're cluttered with too many voices. We're cluttered with doing too many things. We're cluttered with being too many places. And so we don't have enough quiet time to actually sit and hear. We
Yeah.
don't have enough quiet time to just be and sit with ourselves. And if I don't have that quiet time, I cannot go to sleep at night. Like, he won't allow me to go to sleep. And so, if we're gonna like really start to develop ourselves and really know our purpose, we have to get with the right coaches and the right mentors. We have to be willing to step outside of our comfort zone. And then we have to be willing to do illogical things. Quitting a job where you're likely being groomed to be the next CEO is not logical.
No, no. His ways are not our ways.
Yeah. And so, you and I are in the entrepreneurial world, and I believe everyone should be entrepreneurial, because you need at least 2 to 3 streams of income in
Yeah.
this day.
Mhm.
In this day. And so, how do you help? What can you say to entrepreneurs to help them kind of navigate the interpersonal skills that they really need to be working on, even outside of self awareness?
Yeah. So much there. So much there. And we talked a little bit about community. So just knowing that if you're in the entrepreneurial space, there are going to be things that are going to be new. There are going to be times when you are fearful. People don't want to use that term, but it's there and it's real.
It's real.
Don't let the fear paralyze you. That's the key, because the fear can be healthy. The fear can say, hey, there's some things that I don't know that I need to know to move forward. And that fear is what propels me. Okay, perfect example. I'm in the entrepreneurial space. Mila, you and I talked. Social media was not my thing. I have been a public servant for almost all of my life. I went from, just a military servant to a servant scholar, and
Mhm.
now, I'm always going to serve. But now I'm in a space where it's like God called me to be an entrepreneur. Never was my dream. Listen, I retired from the military, retired from the federal government. I do
Mhm.
have a husband, and he retired from the military and he's working. So we were good. I'm like, Lord, shit, I can sit back and relax now. I've worked a lot of years. I was going to say how many. I'm not going to go there. Worked a lot of years. Lord, I'm going to spend some time with my family and pour into, my community and my family. That was my plan. Never was it on the horizon to become an entrepreneur. So I say all that to say there's so much in that space that I did not know. I still don't know. But what I did was I said, well, God called me to this. So again, failure is not an option. So I use that fear to propel myself to say, okay, what don't I know? How do I get that information? Who do I know that can help me with that information? Because who I know, if they don't have it, maybe they know someone who has it. That's a part of it as well. But you have to get clear on your purpose, and you and I talked about that before. You're clear on your purpose, so even in those hard times, your purpose, it keeps you grounded. I'm clear on my purpose. I'm called to help people heal through conflict. And that shows up in so many spaces, whether I'm coaching or consulting or doing mediations, whatever it is, there's conflict in it. Sometimes the
Mhm.
conflict is interpersonal, it's conflict within self. For instance, when I was fighting God, when he was telling me to leave the federal government, no, God, I love my good government job. You're not talking to me. And he turned up the heat, like you said, for you. He began to frustrate situations. And I'm like, God, I'm in this great, good government job that pays me well to do what you've called me on earth to do. And he said to me, I called you to do it, but I determine where you do it. And that was
Ooh.
that was a punch in the face. That was a punch in the face. And so I had to get out, like you said, get out of my comfort zone. And so being willing as entrepreneurs to get out of your comfort zone, because as an entrepreneur, if you're within your comfort zone, you're not growing and you're not reaching people and you are not walking into your purpose. There's no way. I believe, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
No, I mean, you are spot on. And one of the things that I kind of like think through is he called you to do it, but he didn't tell you where. That was a bar, right? Everyone should be leaning into that because so many times, and I was talking with someone else, the parable of the talents is a big parable in my life. Like
Mm,
I will probably spend the rest of my life getting revelation after revelation after revelation about that parable. And it's important because one of the things that God really, really was showing me with it was that I've given everybody something.
mm, that's
I've
good.
given everybody something. And we have some people who just have a mindset that is inappropriate where they don't use the something. And then
Oh,
you connect that back to us being a body of Christ. So if we're a body, that means every organ, every nerve, every bone has to be in the right place. And so when we're selfish and remaining in our comfort zone and focusing on remaining complacent, it's really robbing people of
yes.
what
And
they
God.
have. I was gonna say that next, but
Hmm.
you don't smack them back, front and back. I was just,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and it is almost like sometimes I say to myself, like, God, don't show me no more problems, because if you show me problems, you're gonna have me fix them. I don't need to fix all these problems. Like, I don't need to. But at the same time, it's just like one of the things that I'm being awakened to is the fact that we have lost our identity.
Yes.
And so, like, I don't know the difference between like purpose and identity. That's something PD could probably
Right,
break
right.
down. But because those things are unknown, we just exist.
Hmm.
And then we don't have the requisite level of purpose. Then we don't have the requisite level of intention in our lives. And if we are to live life to the maximum, going back to the parable of the talent, you had to have made some intentional choices with what was given to you.
Yes.
And so, entrepreneurs, you got to make intentional choices. You got to decide that, it hurts. And, I was talking to people like how I finally got with it with the social media thing, because I wasn't with it either. I was like, here's my little secret. I only tell it to women. Let's go. Not putting it out here. I'm not. But yeah. And so you talked a lot about imposter syndrome and fear and things of that nature on your entrepreneurial journey. But
Hmm.
how does that really impact decision making skills for people?
So a big piece, and so for me, I'm going to go back a little bit with imposter syndrome. With imposter syndrome, you're basically not giving yourself credit or attributing your success to someone else. So you have a measure of success, but you're not celebrating it and you're not recognizing it. And you think you're a fraud and you're afraid that you're going to get found out. That's basically what imposter syndrome is. So where does it come from? And there's psychologists and psychiatrists for that, but basically in a nutshell, one of the areas, there are several, but one of the areas that show up and that people don't think about, and in the research I didn't find a lot about that in the research either, we have cognitive dissonance, especially those of any minority class, whether it's you being a woman, you being a racial minority, a religion, whatever the case may be. Because in our society, there has been images that we've been bombarded from the time that we can see, speak, and hear. And so our minds have developed an image of what we think success is and what we think those areas are. For instance, we have an image in our mind of what an entrepreneur is. Subconsciously, we do. And so when we begin to be entrepreneurs, there's cognitive dissonance going on in our mind because our mind has said, hey, based on all of the years and information, entrepreneurs don't look like this. And so when you succeed and you have those successes, your mind says, that was a fluke because you're not a real entrepreneur, because life has already showed you what a real entrepreneur looks like. And we don't realize that we're battling that all the time. And so we have to change our self-talk. All of us have it. We absolutely have it. Whether you want to recognize it or not, we have to tell ourselves a different story. I've begun to tell myself the story based on what the Bible says about me. Because if God says that I'm more than a conqueror, then I'm more than a conqueror. This entrepreneurial world can't hold me back. As a matter of fact, it's a new stepping stone to a further goal in my purpose. And so recognizing that there's something in our minds. So we have to have that mindset shift. Our mindset is what holds a lot of entrepreneurs back, because another piece is we compare ourselves to other people. We do. There are those out there who want to be just like PD. PD is so mega successful. And hey, I would love to be like PD. PD would be the man with 5 talents. God didn't give me 5 talents. Oh, I might be the one with 1 talent.
Wait, Dr. B. I was like, God always does greater. I was like, I think God may be on a 7 and 10 talents now. I really think he might be. He might be on a 7 to 10, but keep going.
You're absolutely, listen, as you're saying it, I'm thinking he might be on 100 talents now, because some of the things that happen. But first of all, being content in what he gave me. I've got to recognize what he gave me. He gave me a lot. And so for me not to recognize it, number one, is dishonoring God. It is dishonoring him. Secondly, I'm disrespecting myself. Becky is great. God made her for a certain purpose. There are little quirks about Becky, but God made her with those quirks for a reason. So I'm going to embrace my little quirks because it makes me who I am. Comparing myself to other people doesn't help me. Their path is different from my path. And so what I have to begin to do is look at me and look at where I want to go, but not measure myself against someone else. So I think that's really critical.
Y'all, we got to stop measuring ourselves.
Yeah.
We got to stop measuring ourselves. And I would add, we have to start pausing to really look at progress. We have to pause to look at progress. And the reason why I'm saying that, because we're measuring, we will improperly measure something because we haven't looked at the progress. And so a lot of times, especially, the enemy is so busy. And one of the ways that he's busy is constantly putting things out there on social media to inform our subconscious and then to have us think a certain way about certain things. And so when you come into entrepreneurship and everyone has told you make $1 million in a day, build a six-figure business, do this, do that, do this, do that, your then measurement becomes, I have to do this. If I haven't did this, then I didn't do it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And God has just been showing me, like, girl, do you know the measure of grace you had on your first year in business? Like, do you understand that? Like, it is almost like unheard of to get to that level of success that fast.
Yeah.
But I would have missed it. I would have missed it if I only focused on that measuring stick, if I only focused on what other people did and their circumstances. And some of my greatest lessons that have built me to be like this, these are my clients' words: a lethal weapon for business.
Love it.
Like, those are their words. What has built me has been these moments of, like, God cares more about my process than the promise, because his promises are yes and amen.
Amen.
Right? He cares more about me having the capacity to hold the talents and invest them rather than just getting the talents.
Yes.
And so I think when we can start to really just lean into heavily what it means to enjoy the process and enjoy who God is creating us along the journey, that could help us with, overcoming imposter syndrome, with overcoming fear. Yes, you will always have some healthy level of fear, but you have to move in spite of it. I think
Yes.
about Pastor Hannah, who, I got this whole little spiritual family in my head, right? And so everybody know Bishop Jakes is my goddaddy, and then Pastor Hannah is my uncle, right? And so Uncle Hannah, he was talking and he was like, they called me and they was like, Bishop said you coming on Sunday to preach, and he like, like, right? And so, like, that imposter syndrome is going to creep up every time you get to a new opportunity. But he was like, God started to talk to him and remind him of who he is. And so if we pause even in the feeling and allow God to inform us again, right? Like him informing Gideon, him informing Jeremiah, like, let him inform you.
Yes.
And walk in God, not in you.
That's the key. That's the key. So I love the pause, the power of the pause. Let's not forget the power of the pause. A piece of advice my niece gave me, because I was in that space where I'm task oriented. I'm that person that I'm going to go through a checklist and I've got to get it done. And so procrastination has never been an issue with me, but sometimes that other end of the spectrum can be just as problematic because you are so busy moving and doing, you don't take the power of the pause. And so as I was moving through the entrepreneurial space, and this is like maybe my first 4 or 5 months, and I think I was doing a little bit of that comparison, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I misunderstood God. I don't think he meant for me to be an entrepreneur. I don't think it was him. And I was talking to my niece, and she said, well, what I'm recognizing is you're not celebrating your small wins. She said, what I want you to do, and I love her because she's like an informal coach and an informal mentor for me. She said, every day, or at least 3 to 4 times a week, I want you to get a jar that has a lid, and on a little piece of paper, I want you to write down your win every day. And she said, if you can do it every day, that's great, but at least 3 to 4 times a week. And she said, at the end of the week, I want you to go through the jar and read off all of your successes, all of your wins. She said, I want you to do the same thing at the end of the month, and you will see how that jar grows. So it's a visualization of the successes that we are not allowing ourselves to recognize, which prevent us from realizing that even though I haven't arrived at where it is I think I'm going, I am making movement. It's almost like you think about Bart Simpson on The Simpsons. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Well, he doesn't give account for, well, we're 100 miles closer or we're 25 miles closer. He just wanted to know, are we there yet? But no, we
You're
need to
teaching
know that the
good.
progress, that progress, we have to recognize that progress along the way.
No, that was so good. So good. Like it doesn't give an account of like that was
Yeah.
good. That was good. And so, man, it is interesting how all of these different things come into play in this progress piece that we're just really leaning into. But how do, and I call it like the entrepreneurial mind, because entrepreneurs are chronic solutionists. And so
Yes.
everyone should have a solutions oriented mind. How do entrepreneurial minds really build resilience and confidence in themselves?
All right. So, first things first, realizing that imperfection is there. And we are not going to be perfect. We're not going to do it perfect, and we're going to make mistakes. Recognize that right up front. It's an ugly truth. It's one that we don't want to hear. I especially don't want to hear it because, for those of you who are familiar with the Enneagram, I am a coach, a master coach of the Enneagram as well. And I'm a one. And what the one is, a perfectionist. A one is the person who walks into a room and there's 100 good things. Well, excuse me, 99 good things, but there's one thing not so great. The one is going to find that one thing that's not so great and is not going to recognize all of those other 99. And so that's something that I struggle with all the time. So recognizing that you're not going to always do it right and it's okay. That's number one. Number two, give yourself grace. You absolutely have to give yourself grace because your self talk is going to take you down a dark path that is going to be challenging to recover from, which is why I think so many entrepreneurs quit within the first 2 or 3 years. Many of us have thought about it. I cannot lie. I have absolutely, you know what? What's that show on Everybody Hates Chris, where the mom says, I don't need this job. My husband's got 2 jobs. I'm like, I don't need this job. My husband got a job. I got 2 retirement incomes. I don't need, and I wanted to quit. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot quit on God, so I can't quit on me. And so that realization that there are going to be some challenges and it is going to get tough, but we have to persevere. Just knowing that if you're walking in your purpose, that entrepreneurial space is going to get a little murky, but the waters will clear up as you go along, as you trust yourself, as you begin to have more confidence in yourself. It's a muscle. And in order for that muscle to get stronger, you've got to work it. Again, you've got to do the work. You absolutely have to do the work. We talked about that community. You've got to get in various communities. We all have communities that are our supporters that we're comfortable with, but they may not have what we need from the entrepreneurial space. So you need that community as well. None of us want to or should have to do it alone. We absolutely shouldn't have to do it alone. And if you're trying to do it alone, that's probably where a lot of your anxiety and frustration is coming from. Get
Mm-hmm.
into a space with others that are either going through the same thing, have gone through the same thing, or know someone who has. So having that diverse community so that you can get that support, I think that's critically important. I was going to say earlier, I think also if you can, and it doesn't have to be the Enneagram, personality assessments so that you can recognize where you sit. What's going on with me? What motivates me? Because if someone's trying to motivate you in a way that's not helpful to you, it's not going to work. If you're trying to motivate yourself in a way that's not helpful for you. So doing some self-assessments will make you a lot more aware of who you are and why you do some of the things that you do and what things you can do to get the best out of yourself. That's the key. For me, it was giving myself grace because I'm not perfect. I know I'm not perfect, but internally, I was still striving for perfection. So now I'm allowing myself a little bit more grace. And the other thing is coaches, mentors, and peer groups. They are so critically important. A lot of times we don't know in certain, like for instance, before I became a coach, I didn't know much about coaching, but it was a part of my job. And so I had to do the work to learn to be a coach and to put it out there. Then working with Dr. Daniels is like, hey, every coach needs a coach. So now, even though I've been coaching for decades, I have several coaches, mentors, making sure that I have not one, not two, but three mentors, because my mentors are working with me in different spaces. And so
Mhm.
making sure that we get into those areas, because if we knew everything, what would God need us for? Yeah.
If we knew everything, what would God need us for? Drop the mic right there. Definitely, definitely, definitely so much more to unpack here. And you just pour so many different things onto us. Do you have any final thoughts on our topic of like why we should really be investing in making sure we know ourselves and can really develop our interpersonal skills?
Absolutely. Knowing yourself and developing your interpersonal skills will impact every single part of your life. It is well worth the investment. There are some lessons that you will learn over and over and over again because you aren't getting it. When you do the work and start to really dig in, getting that self awareness, actually getting more involved in emotional intelligence as a whole, because you want to know how you're showing up in your relationships as well. You want to know what's going on around you and your social awareness as well. All of those things are going to impact you in every aspect of your life, whether it's in personal relationships, whether it's in business relationships, whether it's in work relationships. You want to know how you show up, and you want to show up as your best self. And in order to do that, you've got to do the work. Imposter syndrome, it's going to show up. You need to know how to combat it. How do you combat it? By getting even better with your interpersonal skills.
Well, there you have it, everyone. Make sure you connect with Dr. Becky on Instagram at I am Dr. B, spelled like a B, BEE, and on LinkedIn at Common Ground Conflict Solutions. And you can go to her website at cgconflictsolutions.com. Listen, I don't know about you, but it has me thinking like, man, in what areas can she help me with self-awareness, right?
Mhm.
In what areas can she help me kind of navigate just some different conflicts that we have in our life? Because like when we get to a crossroads, that's a conflict. I
Yes,
think sometimes we make it an argument or something like that, but that's not the case. When we come to that crossroads, that's a conflict. And we're saying we have the expert here for you in your community if you just connect with her. And
absolutely.
if you're ready to unleash those talents, those gifts, those skills, that knowledge down on the inside of you, you hit up your entrepreneurs, attorney, and business strategist, me. You can connect with me at iamandmore.com, where I not only give you goodies. I'm here really to support you to make sure that you actually become you through building wealth through entrepreneurship. And I legally protect you. That's why I'm the lethal weapon. Now listen, I might have to give me some graphics or something with this lethal weapon. But no, love you all. Can't wait to see you next time, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.